And good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of JMU Sound Off, fresh off one of the more magical weekends in JMU athletics history. We're going to go through all of the sights and sounds from the weekend in Harrisonburg, and we have a very special guest tonight in Barry Sadamon, who's going to come give a little perspective on his feelings on the season, as well as a message to the JMU fan base, so stay tuned for that. And as always, our episodes are brought to you by our friends at Skyline Financial Partners and the Montpelier Collective. A big weekend, and we're going to get right to it because we've got a lot to talk about. Taylor Atkins, Michael Evangelista, fresh off stage with Pat McAfee and Steve Brown. I don't know how to start this show other than to go to the man, the myth, the legend himself with the sunglasses, deserving a little bit of the extra spotlight this weekend for his performance, representing all that is good about JMU. And Michael, I don't know where to even start with you about how it happened to get you on the Pat McAfee show. The behind the scenes look that I'm sure fans are all wanting to know. What was it like? First of all, getting to meet the team behind that show, first and foremost, and then also what the experience was like being in front of the largest crowd to ever watch the Pat McAfee show, at least from his perspective, that he had ever seen. Just want to get right to you, your thoughts on Friday's, the initial part of Friday, before we get to some of the other amazing things that happened that day and throughout the weekend.
Yeah, it was unreal. I still ask all my friends to pinch me just to make sure I'm not dreaming. I kind of wish we had like 26,000 people behind us, just like I was on Friday, which was amazing. But couple things. Shout out to Marissa Dowling at ESPN for the backstage passes, the VIP access, and everything. So, as you know, my lovely fiance Courtney played softball at a outstanding Patriot League school that will not be named on this podcast. Marissa happens to be one of her teammates from back in the day. So she works for Game Day, producer. Big shout out to her. But the whole experience was unbelievable. I felt super proud to be representing JMU, but even more proud of all the people that came up and said, did a good job and you represented JMU the right way and everything, and the exposure. It was fantastic. But honestly, like Wednesday night, I was having dinner with my family and my phone buzzes. It's Pat McAfee asking, can you join us on Friday? It's literally how it started. There was no preamble. There was nothing. I said, absolutely. What time should I be there? And he goes, 2:20. And the rest is history. So that's how it all started. Not inclusive of, Marissa and the whole game day piece. Pat McAfee was reaching out. So shout out to JMU Twitter, because from what I heard is a lot of people were DMing and tweeting him to reach out to me, which is unbelievable. Never thought it would ever be that way, but awesome experience. I'm sure we have lots of stories to talk about, but all those guys on stage are just like us. Like, they love to talk ball. They love to talk good college football. They love JMU. They all root for the Dukes. Like, they were so impressed and felt so encouraged to see such a fan base come out in full force. And even on a personal level, when I met Pat McAfee, he was, oh my gosh, you're Michael. I was like, yeah. He's like, I'm so appreciative of you being here. I can't believe you're here. Like, I'm just ready to learn all about JMU football and the history. Like, I'm so stoked. That's literally what he said. The first thing he told me. So it was just an amazing experience and honestly a perfect weekend. Sans the game, but we can get to that later.
Yeah, well, real quick, shout out to Where's Woody, who the shirt that Michael's having on, one of our friends, was able to overnight those. First of all, Michael could look sharp on air, and that we could also make sure that Pat McAfee would have at least the opportunity to give him the shirt. Didn't know if he would actually put it on. It was an awesome moment for him, not only to wear it.
I will keep my sleeves on today, though. I will keep my sleeves on.
At the end. I don't know if you guys saw, though, on Twitter, there was actually, it looks like Pat McAfee was able to give that shirt to one of the kids in the crowd, signed it with the sleeves off. So I definitely thought that was one of the cool little souvenirs from the game day experience, and something that kid, I'm sure, will have at least a fun story to talk about for years to come. Taylor, wanted to bring you into the discussion. I know we had a lot of discussions because we got to spend most of the day Friday and Saturday together. Just your thoughts on the Pat McAfee show experience and getting to witness Michael's appearance live and what it means going forward, just for the attention that he was able to not only bring to JMU Sound Off, but to the JMU Athletics program, but to also educate them. That's what I thought was so great about your appearance, Michael, was that education piece. And I'm curious, Taylor, you had a front row seat to experiencing it as well.
Michael, he didn't slip up when he just said it was the end of a perfect week and minus the game. I mean, I've never felt so excited to be a JMU fan, and have never felt on such a high, combined with such a heartbreaking loss. I mean, just every other box. If I had 100 boxes to check off for this weekend, we checked off 99 of them. And so everything from the Pat McAfee show on Friday, I showed up there. Took the family and my parents to D Hall, and we were like, well, we'll stop by the quad. I'm sure there'll be a bit of a crowd there, but we showed up around 11:30 just to go eat lunch, and we're watching most of the beginning of the show from D Hall. And it just, when I remember watching on TV, I'm saying that looks like the college game day crowds of the first 2 times that it came. And when you got out to the quad just for the Pat McAfee show, I remember I was standing in places on the quad that I was standing in the back for game day. And I just remember looking at my dad, and my dad kind of looked at me and he said, if that's the crowd they had today, I just can't imagine what tomorrow is going to look like. And so it started off with Friday. We'll get into this a little later, but the basketball game Friday night, I mean, the atmosphere, the intensity, again, we'll kind of get more into that, but just that. And then you come into Saturday morning. I will say we took 2 cars. We usually have one, but we took 2 cars. My mom, my wife, and the kids were going to come a little later. Me and my dad said, well, we'll go find some general parking somewhere. We pulled into Harrisonburg a little before 8:00. And I mean, I went to some lots that I thought surely we'll find up. I mean, the Starbucks parking lot across Port Republic, full before 8:00. All the parking garages full. We ended up parking, 2 or 3 blocks away from the Forbes Center parking lot and got one of the last few spaces. And that was one of those moments where you just said, today's going to be something special. So we got a lot to tackle today. There's a ton of topics, but I kudos to Michael. I mean, he hit the vibe of Pat. I mean, he just didn't miss a beat. He felt relaxed. He felt so comfortable. He did share a lot of great information about the school. And really, when you think about it, Michael was kind of the introduction to the weekend of what JMU was going to be. So I don't think there would have been anyone else better to do it on our team than him. And so he was the right guy for the job.
Good. Steve, your thoughts on everything that happened on Friday and leading into the weekend? Is it kind of a perfect appetizer for what we would see on Saturday?
Yeah, I was driving on 64 when Signetti was on. So instead of watching Waze, I had my phone up there so I could watch Signetti and the road, and teared up a little bit when I saw the crowd and I saw how great Coach did, but how big the crowd was. I kind of got a lump in my throat thinking, oh my God, how much fun this is going to be. And, get there. I'm sure the university is extremely pleased with what we've done for them. I mean, it's such a great thing that we've done for the university to put Michael up there as an ambassador. And I'm sure they're all pleased. I mean, from, Jeff Bourne, from President Alger, from, Kevin and Chris and all those guys, I'm sure they're really happy as we were really pushing the university hard and on national television with all those people. So, I'm pleased that it was one of our guys that was able to do it. Couldn't be it's the best guy in the world to put up there. You don't need me up there. You need the Michael Evangelistas of the world. And he's hyping up the crowd. No, but it's great. But so you've got those sunglasses on that you won't even take off. So you're like Jack Nicholson now. You can't take your sunglasses off.
Part of his brand now. I will say this. I'm glad you
great.
Mentioned Steve. I am glad that you mentioned Signetti's appearance because
who was that? Was electric.
Talk about rising to the moment. If there's been I don't want to say a criticism, but at least in the early tenure of Curt Signetti's time here at JMU was his interactions with the media, how he handles his press conference. And I've said both publicly and privately, I think it's an area that he's really grown in over the years in terms of his comfort level and his willingness to share insights and anecdotes. But man, did he embrace it. I loved even in the post-game conversation after, one of the tougher losses you're going to experience as a head coach, he came right out and said how much fun he had with Pat McAfee. And I think they embraced him. He embraced the moment. I love that he was, very upfront in saying when he was asked the question about would he consider other jobs, he said, the grass isn't always greener. Why would you want to leave this? Said he wants to coach for, more than a decade left in his career. And I think if you had 2 ambassadors for JMU on that platform, neither could have done a better job. They both showcased what is so great about this fan base, what's so great about this program, but also the crowd in the moment really rallied around both of you, which I thought was a really great thing to see and something that led into the game day experience, which we'll talk about a little later, but, breaking records. And it just shows that JMU, when we do these types of big moments, these big events, we rise to the occasion, and it was the perfect way to start the great weekend. But I did want to shift gears a little bit to the next big thing that happened that day, and that was the basketball game. a big game with all the national attention early in the season that this team has gotten. An opportunity against a Radford team that played North Carolina hard. We didn't know what kind of crowd there would be for the Friday night game. There was anticipation that would be a big one. And again, the JMU fan base delivered in a big way. Over 8,000 fans in attendance at the AUBC with Reese Davis in attendance, Stanford Steve. Michael, you were at the game as well. I had the chance, thanks to Cliff Wood, want to say shout out right off the bat. Got a chance to see it from the courtside perspective. But just around the horn to all of you, your thoughts on an amazing basketball game and a win over Radford to keep this team undefeated and the national attention and the spotlight on them as well.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. That was my first time at the Atlantic Union Bank Center. And what an unbelievable facility do we have. Obviously I saw the UVA game 2 years ago. I've heard about the sounds, I've heard about the atmosphere, but to see it firsthand against Radford I was like shell shocked when I walked in. The facility is amazing. Shout out to Dylan Thomas and the Duke Club team. I was able to watch the game from the club section and a really good time up there. Wonderful atmosphere. It felt big time. It felt like we've made it. It felt like this is a pillar that we can build upon. And for everyone to think about this, Radford's no pushover. They win the Big South, I think, year over year. They're in the tournament, I think, more often than not. They're a good team. Number one, I mean, whoever that point guard is, his mid-range jump shot was unbelievable. Like they couldn't miss. I think they shot 52 or 53% for the game. It was great to see everyone rise up in the fourth quarter at the end there. Maybe it was a bit of foreshadowing for Saturday, but it was just an awesome way to start the weekend.
Taylor, your thoughts on the basketball game and keeps his team going into the tournament now in Cancun undefeated and continuing to remain in the national rankings for the first time in a long time. Big moment for this basketball program. They delivered in a big way.
Yeah, I mean, a big plug for men's basketball. And as we've mentioned here in some of the other episodes, we're going to dive a lot deeper into men's basketball. Right now, we're kind of juggling as two seasons kind of overlap, but this is something that we want to continue to follow up on. So I want to kind of give everyone a little bit more context to the men's basketball team and everything that Michael said about the game. I mean, even those of us, who have been to a lot of games there, the atmosphere that was there the other night, I mean, is second really only to the UVA game. It was incredible. It was electric. It was loud. I think everyone kind of recognized, even in the pregame, when some of the pregame stuff was going on, when maybe it was only half full at that time, how loud that place can be. So when you get over 8,000 people there, it's an atmosphere. I don't think Tony Bennett was just pandering to JMU when he was talking about how incredible the atmosphere here was when they come a couple of years ago. So basketball team right now, they're 13th in the nation in scoring. And when you look at a lot of the teams that are above them, kind of the way JMU started off last year, where they had a couple of those non-Division I teams in the house and were throwing up 100, 120 points. The 12 teams that are above JMU right now have had a couple of those games. So being 13th in the nation, we're averaging 93.8 points a game. I know there's a couple of overtimes in there, but that scoring average is without some of those non-Division I teams or some of those early exhibition games that really allow people to pad those stats. We're 40th in the nation right now in three-point percentage, and that's one of those things where I talked about last episode. We're not really living and dying by the three. This is a team that's kind of well-rounded top to bottom in their scoring and how they're approached, but that their three-point game is I think it's going to continue to improve as this team kind of gets more familiar with themselves, more comfortable with how the ball is moving on offense. Kind of looking ahead to actually, one more thing I wanted to add about the team that I wrote down. We have 9 guys averaging over 12 minutes a game. Now, again, there is some overtime games there, but this bench is deep. And there's, kind of finding out what that starting rotation looks like and kind of finding out how, Byington's going to be doing those line changes kind of during the game. This is a team that has a lot of talent top to bottom. And what made us successful against Michigan State and can make us successful as we run later into the season, even hopefully a postseason run, is that we have that deep bench with some expertise, some experience and older players that's going to allow us to kind of be one of those teams that's hard to contend with on the national level. But looking ahead this weekend, so if you look at the schedule right now, you're only going to see a Tuesday game. That's because the Wednesday game is TBD. It's the Cancun tournament. They're going to be playing Southern Illinois. Southern Illinois right now is 2-0. They haven't really been challenged. Their 2 wins are against Queens College and Chicago State. Then they're going to play the winner of the winner of that game would play the winner of the Fresno State, New Mexico. New Mexico, obviously one of the top mid-majors in the country. They're only lost right now to number 23 St. Mary's. And Fresno State, interestingly enough, is 1-1. One win over a Morgan State team that isn't very good, but their one loss is a 10-point loss to Kent State. So I think we're going to be able to kind of see at the end of this next week kind of where this team's kind of measures up with some of the teams around the country, especially as a mid-major. But it'll be interesting to see if JMU's able to hang on to that top 25 ranking coming into tomorrow, I believe, when the rankings are announced.
Awesome. Thanks, Darren. And Steve, we've talked a little bit about what having a successful basketball program could mean for this entire athletics department, and also for fans who may be tuning into JMU for the first time in a while from on the hard court. Having a game that was that exciting with that type of crowd, the impact and the ripple effect that could have on the rest of the season. You were also in attendance at the basketball game. Just kind of what you think this start can mean for this program going forward in terms of this fan base really rallying around it and seeing that, just because football season ends doesn't mean there isn't something to do in Harrisonburg. There's plenty of opportunities to cheer on Dukes in an amazing venue. Just your thoughts on that aspect of this.
Yeah, get to as many of these games as you can. For the student, we were a basketball school in the early 80s. That played football. So most of you on here, most of you that are listening, unless you're old like me, don't remember that. That's when we played in Godwin and the bleachers shook. When we moved to the Convo, it was the Electric Zoo, and that place was rocking. Friday night was a lot like Godwin and a lot like the Electric Zoo. We brought streamers in to throw, but we were afraid to throw them because I thought we might get kicked out. Because people were like looking at it, like the cops were looking at me, or at least I thought they were. And I'm thinking, if I throw something, and Alice was going to throw it as soon as we scored, because that's what we used to do. And we thought, well, crap, we get kicked out of here in the first 30 seconds of this game by throwing something. So we didn't. I threw it at the end of the game. But it's, I tell you, Taylor rattled off a bunch of stats, but the one I'll give you is we're number one right now in the country in absolute passion. There is nobody that's going to touch JMU in terms of passion right now. And the free, everything we got free in terms of the millions of dollars worth of advertising for the university from this weekend is huge. So, I loved it. I was talking to Dave Riggert on Saturday morning back at the behind the stage at game day. He's heading to Cancun. He may be there already. I don't know if the team's already there. And he said he gets back Thursday night and he jumps on the plane and goes to Coastal Friday. So he's a little tired, but he's got a lot going on, and it's all good stuff. But I can tell you the basketball piece is one of the more important pieces for us. It's just as important as football. In fact, we actually make more money as a university off of basketball if we make the tournament. You make the NCAA tournament, you start to make some serious cash. And I can tell you, when VCU, when they were part of our league and they got to the Final Four, we cashed checks for a couple years that were huge checks. From VCU. So when you get in there, it helps the conference. Michael and I were talking to Keith Gill, the commissioner of the Sun Belt, on Saturday morning. He was giddy back there. And Keith's a wonderful guy, but you could see the Sun Belt flags flying. He was extremely happy, and it helps the Sun Belt. We were talking about how it helps the conference and everything. But I can tell you the basketball piece, if you can get to a game, we're gonna buy some tickets as the Sound Off guy. We're gonna get a block of tickets for ourselves and start giving some of those away when we can't go. But you've got to get in that arena. It is so much better than you can possibly imagine. So if you've been to JPJ over at UVA, this is 100 times better. And there's nothing wrong with JPJ, but in terms of how loud it is in there in that bowl, it's unbelievable. And those guys fed off of it Friday night. That place was rocking on Friday night.
Yeah, and I like that.
John, I know you give me props about.
Go.
I was gonna say, I know you give me props on T-shirts, but we need a everything school T-shirt ASAP.
Already in the works. Stay tuned. That's the game. I think that's called a teaser, but it's coming. I will say though, I like, Steve, how you said that we lead the nation in passion, because that's a perfect segue to turning the attention to what happened on Saturday with, I think, I know, as Taylor said, wondered what kind of crowd would show up for Pat McAfee. Part of me is wondering what kind of crowd would show up to game day again. This is the third time it's happened. We'd heard from some people who said, I'll get the next one. I'll go to the next one. Almost like this was like a routine thing we brought up on our episode with JMU Sports blog. But I was staying in the hotel with Zach Price. We turned on the quad cam about 6 a.m. and seeing the number of people that were already there. We knew we were in for the big day, but I don't think anybody predicted the 26,000 that showed up. And that's on top of the people that were around the campus in tailgating. It was an amazing atmosphere, unlike I've personally ever seen in terms of the number of people on campus at Bridgeforth. And Michael, I want to segue to this because you had an opportunity as part of the game day experience to be behind the scenes, to meet some of the hosts on that show and to see how that program is put on. And I think you said in our pregame show they were very impressed with JMU and the entire experience. So really curious of your just thoughts from a behind the scenes perspective on what you saw, being able to see that sea of humanity up close and personal, and what it might mean for this university going forward. As Steve said, a 3-hour commercial about all things that are great about JMU and our fan base and the support that we bring.
Yeah. My experience was a very classy organization. I think I got a chance to meet Reese Davis and Herb Street and Stanford Steve, and all they could say is how amazed they were with the crowd at game day and how amazed they were with Pat McAfee's show. When I was going on stage, all the producers and the people behind the scenes goes, we typically don't even have this size for game days. And it's only Friday afternoon. So they were super excited to be there, very thankful and gracious. And honestly, it was pretty funny. I was talking to some of them, just like these podcasts that we do. They come into these productions with, an agenda and what they're going to do. And 40% of that gets scrapped, right? It's just like, they're going to flow. We're going to see what happens. We'll see what the crowd likes. And they're calling audibles on the fly. Everyone's on their headset, on their mic. Okay, we're going to do this. We're not going to do this now. We're going to do this instead. It was honestly organized chaos at its finest, but it was such a good time. They couldn't believe it. They were super grateful. To your point about the commercial, obviously we lost right in overtime, and that hurts. And everyone was emotional after that game. But from a perspective to see that 2 years into the transition, 2 years into FBS, I remember people saying, we'll never get game day again. None of your games will ever really matter. And to see us out there and Pat McAfee just going, I never thought what we were going to expect. And looking at the crowd and the passion, it was like we were living in a dream. And I never thought, and obviously my perspective is different, right? I'm a 2012 grad. I'm much later in the history, right? But I had no idea we would ever be on this sort of stage at this point and so soon.
And I am curious, one last question for you, Michael, though. Just what was it like being on stage for the game day piece of it, though? Getting a chance to see Lee Corso, getting a chance to meet Kirk Herbstreit and Reese Davis, and to talk about their feelings on JMU, just anything behind the scenes about their impressions of the campus, their impressions of our fan base, because it seemed from everything they said on air that they continue to be wowed by what happens in Harrisonburg, and kind of a hidden gem, as they've said, that I guess we can't really say hidden gem anymore, because a lot of people are starting to learn about JMU from all the national coverage and the national attention that these programs continue to get. Anything behind the scenes, just your perspective on that aspect of it?
I mean, the time I had with them was fairly short, but it was very appreciative. They were stunned at how large the campus actually was. When we talked about the size of JMU, we always get the small school, in quotes when JMU is referenced, but it's true. It's 23,000 people. The campus is, I think, almost doubled in size since I've been there. And we talked about that a little bit. I geeked out. AJ Hawk was on stage. So right before we started the broadcast, I told him, I was like, hey, I'm a big fan of the NFL draft growing up. I was reading those Athlon books and the Phil Steele books, and I remember his draft profile. So we were kind of talking shop before we went live, which kind of made it more natural when we got on. But he was like, so you come back every game? I'm like, yeah, I'm 45 minutes away. He's like, you drive 45 minutes to go to JMU games? I was like, that's a short trip for most of our fans. So he was stunned at just the commitment and the passion right off the bat.
Well, it's a good transition for the passion that continued from game day. Made its way into Bridgeforth Stadium in a big way. And I like Chris Ward's point about, did the students sleep at all on Saturday? I don't know, because their energy that went into Bridgeforth, from the earliest arriving crowd, I will personally say I've seen in my time as a fan of Bridgeforth Stadium, coming in, getting to see how packed that stadium was for what is a matchup that each and every one of us talked about before we went in the Sun Belt. What was the team we were most excited to play on a regular basis? It was App State. The rivalry that we've developed with them over time, the fact that every game that we play with them seems to go down to the last play, and it went down to the last play in this game. Taylor, to bring you in on the game, I know you were very focused in the week on this game, and in some of the private chats we had, you both said, at the end of the day, this is one of those games that, regardless of what the line is going to be close, because that's just the way these two teams play. How did you see this matchup, and maybe your initial takeaways from Saturday's game, and what it means for this rivalry going forward?
It's been hard to try and put into words. Just it's a feeling that I haven't had as a JMU fan, or really a fan of any of my favorite sports teams, where it was such a breaking loss. But at the same time, and John, you mentioned this in some of our conversations, there was a level of contentment that you had with it. My immediate thought as I'm walking back to the car after the game was, man, this just adds yet another epic chapter in what is continuing, in my opinion, to be one of the, I'm not even going to say one of the best rivalries in the Sun Belt or in the G5. I mean, just overall, if you could find two rivals that their last 4 games have ended like they have. And for those of you that aren't familiar, in 07, basically we had the game won with a short field goal. We were just going to run the ball one more time to the middle of the field. We were on the right hash, run the ball just up the middle to the left, and we fumbled, and we fumbled, and the game was over. And App State, they went on to win their 3rd, I believe, national championship that year, in a game where the game was won. And you can find that game on YouTube if you really want to put yourself through that again. And then obviously the 2008 game that a lot of people are familiar with, we're down 21-0 at halftime. Halftime opens up, stadium is still full, no one has left, and Scotty McGee, with one of the greatest returns of all time, something I refer to as the kick, takes it to the house, and it basically sets up a back and forth. We catch up in the score. We kind of go back and forth in the fourth quarter, ends with a 35-32 win. And then obviously you have about 14 years of time between that game and the game that we had in Boone last year. I mean, down 28-3. I'm sitting with Michael in the stands, and there was a point where it's just like, well, man, if we're not going to win the game, we're at least going to have some fun and let these Boone App State fans know that we're here. And man, slowly but surely they start coming back. And it was one of those comebacks where I'm not going to say like, oh, I predicted it, but you kind of knew that it was there, just the way this team had been playing. And we all remember that epic hit that Q Reed had at the end of the game to solidify that win. And then, of course, you come back to this game and, how the game played, the first 3 quarters, I've never seen a JMU team in recent memory not score a touchdown in such a long period of time. And so you keep hearing people kind of around you like, man, we just have to come back because we're just not going to end this game with 5 points. And the way the game ended, and I'll say this for the ending, I've stayed off of social media the last 24 hours, not because I'm frustrated or mad, or I just didn't want other opinions kind of influencing my perspective on this game. And, the way that last call was, it's one of those things where I think it was the right call in the sense that I think if I take the purple sunglasses off, could you have, the rule is you must be able to confirm with video. Could you confirm it? I think it's the right call to say, no, you can't confirm it. At the same time, do I think the ball fumbled out of the end zone? I do, but I also think that's probably, there's some JMU bias. So whatever, regardless, the fact remains is, we're talking about not even a game of inches, but whether this ball crossed this line and whether it went out here and there, and just even how that play progressed, which in my mind felt like an eternity, just seeing them kind of run that long stretch toward the sideline, and every step you're taking, you're only gaining about an inch forward. And man, it just adds another, and then seeing the App State football team charge the middle of the field, taunt our players. Like I hated it with a passion, but at the same time, I was like, yes, like, let's just keep this fire burning and continue making this one of the best rivalries in college football.
I took a picture of the team on the 50-yard line. I said, don't forget.
Yeah. Well,
One
thing on that, though, is as somebody who did look at least some of the App State reaction to it, we put out a tweet after the game where said, this is what makes the Sun Belt so fun. I saw Chris Vanini put out a thing saying, we got to get the Sun Belt on more linear TV because these matchups are too good not to showcase. Back to your earlier point about, maybe we do get a better TV deal if our conference continues to deliver like this. But, the response to that tweet about, us gave props to App State. We said, look, this is what these rivalries are all about, is the losses are going to gut you and the wins are going to mean more. And you're going to be talking about them decades from now. The App State fans that responded to us said, just how grateful they are to have us in the conference. They enjoyed this game, obviously, because they won, but enjoyed it just as much as we did from the perspective of there's at least one date on the calendar you can circle every year now where you're going to have a game that's going to mean something, and it's probably going to rip your heart out or be the type of fuel and energy that propels you through the rest of the season. And I think now when you look at this game on the schedule, this is where we talked about what is the name of the royal rivalry for the ODU. We need a rivalry name for this game because it's the type of thing that is going to get national attention and the type of thing that's going to bring a lot of eyeballs and focus on both of these programs. And I think it's great for Sunbelt, it's great for the Group of Five, and great for college football all around. Looking at the game, Steve, I know you were at a wedding, but you've had a chance to now watch the replay. It was a game where we struggled on offense, more than we have at any other point in the season through the first three quarters. What did you see at least from that App State was doing, or was it an execution issue from JMU, or maybe a combination of both that led to our struggles through three quarters, but allowed us at least to turn it on at the end and get the game tied? But I am curious what you saw from what App State did and then from our execution perspective.
It was a little bit of both. I thought, App State had a good game plan. I thought they did a nice job. We were flat and didn't execute like we normally do. And when you do that and you turn the ball over, the talent margin's so thin and they're so good, they're going to capitalize. It's what they did. And with the wedding, it was a wonderful wedding. Alice was at the game, so there was a representative of the Brown family there. But I was down at a wedding.
She was
in
loud. I will
Winston-Salem.
tell you that, Steve. She was passionate on the sidelines. She wasn't holding back.
She's always loud. And I finally got Wi-Fi at the reception, and there were a contingent of JMU people there and a contingent of App State people. The groom was an App State guy. And so, we're at the reception and we're all trying to watch on our phones. We do have it. We're watching it. The App State people are getting excited at one point and then they get depressed when we tie it up. And everybody's like high-fiving each other as the groom and the bride are walking in, and they think, we're cheering for them. High-fiving because we're going to overtime. But it was great in terms of the execution part. I know that we all know we're flat. We heard what the players said. We heard what the coach said. And congratulations to App State. Those folks at the wedding couldn't have been more, more responsive and decent. I went over to them as soon as we lost. I said, that's a great game for you guys. The first thing out of their mouth was, praise God, you guys are in our conference. This is what we've been missing for a long time. This is what we wanted. And I said, same here. This is exactly, I hate to lose, but this is why I wanted to be in this conference. It was for you guys, for Marshall, ODU. It's wonderful to have the rivalry, and they couldn't have been more complimentary. They were talking about game day. They couldn't believe I went to game day and then put a suit on and drove down, but it was a blast. And so, from that standpoint, I'm disappointed for us. If all of us were being honest, nobody thought we were going to go undefeated. I was hoping we go undefeated. But I think, probably the most aggressive pick out of our group was me at the beginning of this year when I said we're going to go 10-2, and everybody looked at me and said, there's no way. I thought we would lose one of these games. I thought we'd lose to Marshall, and I thought we'd lose to either App or Coastal. I hate Coastal with a passion. So I'm hoping that next week, we'll talk about that later, but I think this team's going to be ready to roll on Saturday. I wouldn't want to be the team that we get next. That's not going to be good for you. And so I'll save all that for later. But the place was rocking on television. It looked great. The place, the camera was shaking. I don't know where the camera angles were, but my God, it was shaking. The crowd was hyped up. It was electric to watch even on the phone. So I know it was electric there because Alice was texting me. My daughter texted me and said, don't you effing move. Wherever you're standing, don't move. And that was like 11 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And I'm like, so, okay, I won't move. I'll stay right where I am.
Michael, I wanted to ask you, because you talked about in our pre-conversation that, obviously you were emotional about the atmosphere. And I want to get you to comment on that because I thought it was the best atmosphere I've ever experienced inside Bridgeforth. But what kind of impact that type of game, the rivalry aspect of it, the crowd, on top of what we all talked about from Pat McAfee and game day, what the impact that this could have on recruiting and the JMU brand. I'm curious if you've seen anything. I know we did have a commit yesterday that you could probably shed some light on, but what the ripple effect from that atmosphere can have going forward for this program.
Yeah. And in the words of Signetti, right, just use common sense. Like, that atmosphere was electric. And for any recruit that was there and saw the passion and the pride, and I don't know if you guys remember, but maybe the last time we had overtime was the helicopter game, maybe, right, in 2010 or 2011.
Very similar. I'm so happy you brought that up because I said to somebody, actually in the first 10 minutes of the game that it kind of felt that way
Yes.
in the stadium. It was the shadows. It was that time of day. Really
Exactly.
great point by you. I couldn't agree more.
Remember the end of that game, how loud it was, and there was maybe 12,000 people there, half
Yeah.
full stadium, and to have 26,000 standing up in applause at the start of the overtime, and everyone's jumping around. It was unbelievable. And I said I waited a decade for this because obviously that's when the stadium was built up. But I can imagine people that were waiting 40, 50, 30, 20 years for a moment like that to see everyone just together. No one was leaving that game. Everyone was there until the end. Everyone was there behind the student athletes. And to the point of your question, right? The recruiting wise, Keelan Flo, cornerback from Chambers High School from Charlotte, North Carolina. By the way, Charlotte, North Carolina, committed on Saturday, a 3-star corner who was previously committed to West Virginia. Virginia Tech, Charlotte, you name it, they probably offered him. Everyone wanted him, right? So that happened on Saturday, big time recruit. If there was a part of our team that we need to increase some of our athleticism, get some higher level recruits, it's on the back end. We're doing that. We're seeing tons of safeties and DBs on that end. So impact's great. We offered, I think we had a couple of PWOs, preferred walk-on offers, go out to some Richmond natives and some other folks across Virginia. Like I said before, I think we're probably going to be done on the Virginia or on the high school recruiting commitment standpoint and probably focus more on the portal in the off season, but really awesome to see. But Brooke, also got to finally meet Brooke Boyd. That was amazing.
Yeah.
At the end of the game, she's fantastic. I was so thrilled to finally meet her because I hear about the fandom and the lore behind her and her family. That was so cool. But yeah, everyone that stayed the entire game, just like kudos because it was electric. Everyone was jumping around. I don't think I've heard Bridgeforth that loud. And by the way, guys, I've graduated now. I'm not on the student section anymore on the old side. I'm on section 214 with Ben Markowitz and a bunch of other folks. But it was a party. So I was very, very thrilled and very privileged and just so proud of the entire fan base.
And I'll say, Michael, you may have the best picture vantage point of all of Bridgeforth. I think that view that you have from your seats just is awesome because every week you post a picture from your seats and I'm always like, man, that's the best shot in the house. I also want to say shout out to Brooke Boyd because Taylor and I got a chance to meet her after the basketball game. Got a chance to take a picture with her and she was awesome. Really great to meet you, Brooke. And we did really quick before we bring in our guest, a couple of housekeeping matters. We had a lot of people come up to this weekend and say that they had just found JMU Sound Off. We had a few people ask us about where they could get our Sound Off shirts. Best way to get our Sound Off shirts, jmusoundoff.com. Buyer beware. There are some websites out there that are hijacking some of our t-shirts and they're putting them out there. So the best way, if you want to make sure you're getting us and helping to support the collective, jmusoundoff.com. There's a link there directly to our store. Get some of the designs that we have and some of the ones that we're going to have coming out over the next couple of weeks. But we also wanted to just introduce ourselves really quickly to those who may not know. I'm Jonathan McNamara. We've got Taylor Atkins, Steve Brown, and Michael Evangelista. We started this thing last year as a Twitter space, just an opportunity to give the fan perspective that, we're very clear in all of our episodes saying that we're not journalists. We're not reporters. We don't have inside sources. We're just fans and wanted to bring a different, more positive look at JMU athletics across the board. And we started this video stream in August and have been growing it ever since. And just glad for so many people who are now tuning into the show and so many people that are engaging and interacting with us. As we've said from day one, that's why we're doing this, is to have an opportunity to grow this brand and to bring more eyeballs and attention to JMU. And we, might have poured some lighter fluid on that brand in a big way this weekend with Michael's appearance. We're just grateful to everyone who continues to support the show, and we're going to continue to make content. But another thing we wanted to do was bring on a guest tonight. We thought this was the perfect weekend before we look forward to the Coastal Carolina game, and in a game that we'll talk about later. All of our goals still remain intact in terms of potentially a Sun Belt championship. But one of the things this weekend could potentially bring is more of a focus and more of attention on the aspect and the importance of fundraising. And for those of you who are in the Richmond community who may be familiar with the work of Barry Sadamon, somebody who has not only the best tailgates, in my opinion, of anybody in the JMU fandom, but somebody who's worked as a Duke Club rep, a Richmond chapter president, and somebody who's always focused on finding different and unique ways to bring attention to this program and to bring more people into our fan support groups and to help raise money. And Barry asked us this week if he could come on the podcast and share a little bit about his story. And he has a message to JMU fans. And with that, Barry, thanks for coming on JMU Sound Off. Right off the bat, I just have to say, your jambalaya yesterday. I mean, I had hyped up your ribs and the brisket. The jambalaya is now your number one item without question, in my opinion. Hopefully, we can get that on your Christmas party menu list. I know you've got some other items, but
well, maybe, but I don't know if your daughter Perry would agree with that or not. So,
yeah, sure.
We have to make sure we look out for our best customers, John. So.
Absolutely. So Barry, introduce yourself to JMU fans who may not know who you are. Give a little bit about your backstory before we get into a little bit more about what you wanted to talk about tonight.
Yeah. So, thanks for having me on. First of all, I've known all of you guys for quite a while. Probably Michael the least, just because you're younger to the JMU crowd. But I mean, I grew up in I grew up in the Valley. I was a townie. Graduated from JMU in '94, but always want to go to JMU. And I posted a picture on Twitter this morning of me as a 4-year-old in 1976 on my dad's shoulders. I don't even think it was Bridgeport Stadium. I think it was just the field. Like, it was those same games where you'd see the pictures of like Carrier on a lawn chair on the side of the football field. So I've been going to JMU events, going to JMU games for a long, long time. Some of you may not know. Yeah, there it is. That's actually my dad, not me, in the other photo. But my dad, Uncle Bijan, many people know him as that, is actually the longest tenured professor. He's retired now, but he taught for 50 years at JMU. And so you can imagine, the type of purple blood that runs deep here. But, he was an immigrant. So he had no appreciation for sports or anything like that. But what he did was he had appreciation for students who couldn't be home or on the holidays and things like that, or maybe people who were far from their families, because he, and my mom are both always, very far removed, across the world from their families. So Thanksgiving dinners, when the basketball team couldn't go home because they were playing in a tournament that week, if there was a basketball player in one of my dad's classes, the basketball team would have Thanksgiving dinner with us. And like, I remember vividly, Eric Brent, Boo Boo Brent, Eric Esch, those guys. Steve, you'll probably remember those names from, the mid 80s, coming over and having Thanksgiving dinner with us. Or, I would find my own ways to basketball games through friends of parents or friends and stuff like that would get me tickets or whatever. We didn't have basketball tickets or football tickets. I just kind of found my own way. And I remember like Eric Esch and Boo Boo Brent would drive me home from the games. And I would actually be like the kid that was like wiping the towel, at the old convocation center, wiping the sweat off the floors, under the basket back then. So been involved and around JMU sports for a long, long time. If you fast forward to after college, I remember, going to the Michael Vick years at Virginia Tech. And I remember, going to Tech games and experiencing Lane Stadium when Virginia Tech went to the national championship that year and lost to Florida State. And a few years went by, and I started thinking to myself, like, why are we doing this? Why are we going to Tech games? We should be going to the JMU games. And why can't JMU have this? Like, there's no reason why JMU can't. That at that point in time, if you look back 15 or 20 years to what Tech had done before then, it wasn't anything too far away from what, where JMU was at. And so I actually called one of my buddies, Brian Dixon, better known as Spanky. Actually, I think he was one of your neighbors, John, for a little while, a ways back. But I said, Spanky, it was 2003. You were a student then, John, right? You were in school then. And I said, hey, let's get JMU tickets. Why are we going to Tech games? It's $50 a ticket. We can go for a season ticket at that time. It was $50 a ticket. We can go. We sat in like section 11 or 12, which is basically where section 109 is now. And we started coming to JMU games. And I remember we lost. I don't know if it was probably your junior year, John. We lost to Northeastern in the last game of the season. And it was a terrible, terrible loss. I looked at Spanky and I said, I think we can win the national championship next year. And he's like, are you nuts? And I said, well, think about it. Delaware, CA, we're one of the best teams in CA. We're bringing everybody back. We can stay healthy. And, we did. And then, we caught lightning in a bottle that year. Your friend Jimmy Irwin wrote the book, right? Midnight in Chattanooga. And Started recruiting a lot of people to come back to JMU, come to tailgates, come to games. And it was all about how do we just make this experience fun for people? And how do you bring people of different generations, times, maybe friends that I only see once a year because that's the game, and this year we just happened to choose this game, brought a bunch of my fraternity brothers back for this game way before we thought it was going to be what it was going to be, what it ended up being. But sometimes it's just the best way to catch up with your old friends. And, if you fast forward to now, and I think about the words that I was saying back then, why not us? Why can't we be in the top 25, top 10 college football playoff, conversation? Hill Mallory, if you're out there listening, I had an argument with Hill in like 2007 about how the college football playoffs was going to expand to 12, they were going to create a playoff. It was going to eventually go to 12 teams. And we were going to have a shot to be in that in our life, before 2030 was my exact prediction. Right. And here we are. Right. And I think next year we will be in the conversation for the college football playoff. We won't have this stupid lack of eligibility thing, that's going on right now. But the message I kind of wanted to talk about when you tie all that together is the next several years are, I think, more critical from a fundraising perspective to JMU athletics than what anybody actually can realize, right? This whole lawsuit thing, and people have different opinions on it, but I don't think people realize how important it is when you look at we are not on a level playing field with the rest of FBS. Forget about the Sun Belt versus the Power Five. We're not on a level playing field with anybody right now. The TV contracts that are currently set, the Power Five gets all the money. It's going to be the Power Four next year, but Power Five gets all the money. And then after that, it goes American, Mountain West, and on down. And eventually you get even past Conference USA and you get to the Sun Belt. And that's just because that was what the landscape looked like when they did all that 5-6 years ago. And, people like, Mike Houston, when he went to ECU and, he got a 3 times pay raise. And then he since, got another, jump, making $2 million a year. That's because in the American Athletic Conference, they pay out $10 to $12 million per year per school based upon the TV contract per year. The Sun Belt gets $2 to $3 million. So that's a $9 million per year advantage Tulane has over, I'm going to say Troy right now, right? Because that's, if you think about it with who's eligible, that's the difference. And JMU gets, by the way, 0 of that because of our eligibility. If we win this lawsuit or this injunction, whatever happens, we all of a sudden get access to at least the $3 million that the rest of our peers in the Sun Belt get, but we don't even get access to that today. Yet we're the ones driving all this attention and excitement, around the Sun Belt Conference and the Group of Five. So until the TV contracts get reconciled again, and when they do, the Sun Belt will see its payday. I promise you, there's going to be the Power Four. It's going to be the Mountain West and the Sun Belt right after that. And I'm going to make some more predictions now. ECU and Memphis are going to be in the Sun Belt before this decade's over, right? Because they're going to they know that the American's going to get a crappy TV contract and Sun Belt's going to get it. But we have to close the gap somehow, some way between ourselves and everybody else in the Tulane. I'm just going to use Tulane as an example because they're the poster child for the Group of Five right now, outside of us. We got to close that gap. This publicity that we're getting is incredible, and it's an incredible advertisement for our university. But you know what else it is? It's an incredible advertisement for the individual athletes. Terrence Edwards, I can't believe that we had a guy who got National Player of the Week honors. Unreal. But if you don't think the Power Five schools are calling his high school coaches right now to find out how much is it going to take to pay him to transfer to Georgetown or Villanova or whatever else, you're wrong. That's happening. I won't name names. I won't name anything, but I know for a fact firsthand that SEC schools are contacting our players and offering them $50,000, $100,000, some of them $200,000 a year for next year to transfer. How do you compete with that? you saw today Signetti's name coming up on the leaderboards for the Syracuse job. I know they were being a little bit ingested on Pat McAfee's show. Tell me that guy from Michigan State did not want Kurt Signetti as his next coach at Michigan State. Whether any of those, rumors, how they play out, who knows? But people are going to be calling Sig. Yep. And they're going to want them to go to their schools. And somehow, some way, JMU's got to bridge that gap. And the only way to do it is through us. It's through I don't know how many people are watching this show right now, but it's that, JMU leads the country in passion that you guys just said earlier. That passion has got to translate into dollars, not just for the Duke Club, but I know you guys are always talking about right now. I don't think there's anything more important than NIL and the Montpelier Collective. I wish monies that I've already committed to JMU I could redirect somehow into NIL, but I can't. So I just contribute more in different ways to the Montpelier Collective. But if we don't do this, these players are going to be gone. Our coaching staff will be gone. Our defensive coordinator, he's got to be the hottest commodity for a defensive coordinator in the country right now. So my plea to JMU Nation is take all the awesomeness we've seen in the last 48 hours and actually this whole magical year across sports and make sure that we are doing what we can. We got a lot of successful people that have come through our university that can help close that gap. And I want to say one last thing. Only six teams were ranked in both sports, right? Men's basketball and college football and football. It was JMU, UNC, Tennessee, Alabama, Arizona, and Texas. If you add men's soccer to the mix, by the way, go Dukes, just went to the Sweet 16 today in Georgia. You go down to 2. It's JMU and UNC. Do you know how many universities have 4 fall sports in the top 25? 1. It's James Madison. And you know how many we have? 5. Because you got to throw in volleyball and you got to throw in I forgot who else I'm missing right now, but it's unbelievable. So we are in a very special time across all sports, and the JMU Nation's got to take advantage.
Barry, I want to ask you, because I know that's all you wanted to say was to give your message, and it's an important message because it's something we made when we started Sound Off. We wanted to bring this conversation to the forefront because we've all heard that we have such passionate fans, people who are proud to wear a purple shirt or put a flag on their house or a JMU license plate, but it's never translated into the levels of financial support that we need to sustain this momentum, sustain the success, especially, as you said, in an era and a time where everything has changed with NIL and at a time we're at a disadvantage to our peers. As someone who has actively fundraised for JMU as a rep that was heavily involved in trying to encourage your neighbors and your friends to donate, what in your opinion has been the barrier? And do you think this is a moment that could overcome some of the challenges that we've had in the past in terms of convincing people? Because let's just and maybe this colors your answer a bit, but one thing we've always heard some people say is, well, why do you need my money when we're so successful now? What would your answer be to that person who would say that to you in terms of not understanding why they need to give more money to JMU?
Well, you asked 2 questions, right? The first question is barrier. I'm going to start with that. And I think the number one thing was you had people who were passionate about JMU, but never really believed that we were relevant in the scheme of things. And you know what? Despite our wild success at the FCS level and even the game days and everything else, we kind of weren't. But now we are. We're very relevant. I mean, we're going to be in the talk for the college football playoff next year. That will happen. And if it doesn't happen next year, it's going to happen the year after that. But this will happen. So now all of a sudden we're wildly relevant on a wildly imbalanced playing field. And so it's kind of what I said before. So the answer to your second question is the excuses are over. We are relevant. We are on the national stage. We can compete at the highest level, but it's not sustainable given the financial disadvantage we have to the rest of FBS and the rest of Division I sports. I mean, it all comes down to conference affiliation and the money that is associated with those conferences. And we're not going to see that money for several more years.
I'm going to tout Barry a little bit because he's incredibly humble in how he introduced himself as just someone who grew up around JMU and bought some $50 season tickets. My first time meeting Barry was my senior year. It was the fall of '06. It was the Joe Flacco Delaware JMU football game, and I'm strolling through P-Lot, which had some tailgaters. There was tailgating. It was not the shoulder to shoulder, wall to wall tailgate scene that you have today. But I walk up to Barry. He introduced himself, and I was intrigued. I have this picture still on Facebook. We might throw it up on Twitter or something later this week. But it was
I know the story you're going to tell.
He was cooking some blue chickens. He had some blue chickens out on the grill. And, this is 2 years after the national championship. When I started my freshman year, it was the year that you're talking about that Northeastern loss, the last game of the season. So I started, at the beginning of our streak of non-losing seasons. My sophomore year was the national championship. By this point, the '06 Delaware game, we had that '05 kind of disappointing year. I mean, very disappointing, kind of the fall off from '04. And '06 was, we were kind of revving things back up. It was, Riscotti's last year. And '06 was kind of the beginning of saying, okay, this wasn't just a flash in the pan. That was my senior year. And that was the year after would be the beginning of when I started working at JMU. So I worked at JMU for 6 years in college athletics and went on to UTSA for another 6 years after that. But met Barry early on, and what he did with his time and his efforts and his resources, he was always very generous in his giving. But Barry was the Richmond chapter Duke Club rep, and at the time, Barry, you worked tirelessly, and I mean,
it's fun.
And again, Barry's going to be humble, so I'm going to be not humble for him and just say how hard he worked on some of these events. The weekly newsletter you would put out. I mean, one thing you've always been is you have been the Duke Club JMU fan that has just gone above and beyond in trying to encapsulate that passion that you just went on this long speech about, and trying to find a way of how do I get others to feel what I'm feeling? How do I get others to appreciate just how special what's happening at JMU is? And I'm going to say this real quick because Barry hit on a lot of these points. If you're listening to this now, if you're watching this now, someone that has the JMU itch. Someone that is not nearly as engaged as they should be. And if you're sitting there thinking, man, that kind of sounds like me, I'm talking right to you right now. And I'm telling you, reach out to that person, talk to them about JMU, kind of ask some questions about, where are you with JMU? What do you think you could do with this? The need for people to get on board is now, because we're at a moment right now where the ROI on dollars invested and volunteer hours and people reaching out is never going to be higher. And so the Montpelier Collective, again, if you think I'm talking to you, I'm talking to you right now. And the people that the people that you need to reach out to and introduce them to the Montpelier Collective, go to the website. Cliff Wood will answer every single question, email, and everything that comes through that website. Go to the Duke Club, Scooter Rankin, his email, his phone number, it's all right there. Reach out. Don't wait for these people to reach out to you. Because I'll be honest, Barry was talking about being short on dollars and resources and staffing. The Duke Club does an incredible job. There is just no way, though, that their development officers can reach out and cold call and visit every single person that has both the capacity and affinity to make this one of the nation's leading athletic programs, top to bottom, not just football, not just basketball, but top to bottom, as Barry mentioned, one of the most successful athletic programs. And what that means for JMU, we always use this front porch reference. It's the front porch for JMU, but it's also really the front porch for the Shenandoah Valley and that entire region of Virginia. I mean, Michael made a great point of this on the Pat McAfee show. We are the Valley's team. There is not another Division I football program from the northern part of the Shenandoah Valley all the way down to the southern part of the Shenandoah Valley. Virginia Tech has Southwest Virginia. Give UVA Central Virginia. JMU should be the school, the athletic program, the football program of the Shenandoah Valley in Western Virginia. We have an opportunity to do that. So we have an opportunity to really showcase that region. We have an opportunity to showcase our school and all of the benefits that come with being a great program. So Barry, it would take too long to list off all the things that he's done for JMU and the impact that he's made. I will say personally, Barry, it's been a privilege being a friend and working with you both professionally and getting to know you all these years. And I can't express how much you have done for JMU and how appreciative I am. So
you left out the best part of the story. I wasn't just grilling blue chickens. We had Cornish game hens on a stick. Remember?
Yes.
We were dyed blue, and we pulled them out when the Delaware bus came by. It was we did win that game, though.
We did. Yes.
You know what? I think it was there was a point in time where there were, I think it was after 2012, there were 2 first-round draft pick quarterbacks that had ever played against JMU, and they were winless against JMU, and it was Joe Flacco and Tyrod Taylor. So just wanted to put that out there. So,
hey Barry, I'm going to keep you in for the next part of our discussion, because we as important as this narrative is and around getting support for JMU, there's still some football left to play this season, and our continued success is still in front of us. We will find out this week. If we are successful in our lawsuit, there should be some news. Steve, maybe you have a little bit more insight, but it does appear that we'll all see some news on Monday about possible legal action that could lead to JMU still being eligible to play in the Sun Belt Championship game. But we have to win a football game first against Coastal Carolina. I am just curious, Barrett, what do you think about this game this weekend against a team that I think we all have a lot of respect for, App State, but this is a Coastal program that I know my last trip to Myrtle Beach did not end very well in that season where we lost. It was 2005 when we played at Coastal Carolina, and that's a game that I see in my dreams sometimes. It's just a lot of highlights on Sports Center from that game that went against JMU. Just curious what you see in this weekend's matchup and why this is important for our program to try to once again put ourselves in the best possible position to reach potentially a championship game or even a better bowl appearance if we don't get the waiver.
Well, I remember I see Dennis Fisher made a comment on here, and I remember he sent me a text that day, and he goes, "The Chanticleers? Really? What is a Chanticleer?" And I remember going, I don't even know what just happened. That was an embarrassment. That game coming off the national championship, and I forgot their quarterback's name. It was Tyler something or another.
Oh,
yeah,
Thigpen.
Tyler Thigpen.
Great player. Great player.
Decent NFL career backup guy. So you actually want to be in a pretty good quarterback. But I'm nervous about the game because I know they're talented on the field. So I think if you would have told me that on week 4 or 5, that the toughest 2 games we have all season are the last 2 games, I would not have seen it playing out that way based upon where the landscape was October 1. But that's what's happened. The toughest 2 games are the last 2 games. I actually think Troy is the 4th best team in the Sun Belt, behind us, App State, and Coastal. So we have a game in our hands next week. And now I don't respect them as a program at all. To me, they're like a good they're an FCS level program playing, Sun Belt football at a high level. I feel the same way about Georgia State, but I'm very nervous about this game, and I think we should. It's not going to be a blowout win. It's going to be a tough, ugly. We're going to come out of that going, we look bad or we didn't play a good game, even if we win, right? Because the other team actually has something to do. Like App State, everybody says, we played awful offensively. We missed this, we missed that. It's like, the other 11 guys on the field has something to do with that. And App State played very well defensively. They made our offense make mistakes. And I think we're going to have the same kind of issues next week against Coastal.
Michael, I'm curious. You're somebody who's very plugged into the personnel on these teams, and there's been a lot of talk about Grayson McCall. It does not appear he's going to be eligible to come back for this game against JMU. What have you seen from this Coastal team this year, and is there a concern in this matchup? I know one thing we talked about leading into this discussion tonight was that we maybe saw the impact of losing Jalen Green against App State. Is there our pass rush against this offense and their ability to throw the ball? What can fans expect to see from Coastal? And if there are any concerns, what are they for you?
Yeah. One thing to think about with this team is the versatility, regardless who's playing quarterback. So they have 2 quarterbacks there right now. It's I think Ethan Vasco, who was a former ODU commit, transferred from Kansas, and I believe Jared guessed. So I think we saw a little bit last year. And they have been very versatile on running the quarterback in the play action game. So I think this is a very different game where we have to legitimately maybe not go up the field as fast, but play very balanced on the defensive line. That's number one. And Tim Beck, first year head coach, he was the OC at NC State last year, has done a very good job sort of learning his personnel, not trying to be Chadwell 2.0 and being himself. So it took a while for that to gel. There was a lot of criticism at the start of the season, but it's starting to come together. But regardless who plays quarterback, this is a dual threat team. We'll see a lot of downhill power game, and we're going to have to play better up front on both sides of the ball to come away with a W.
Steve, if there was a game last year that the JMU sent a message to the Sun Belt, it was against this Coastal Carolina team at the end, declaring ourselves kings of the East, rightfully so. But you have to think this is going to be a Coastal team, especially coming off a loss last week to Army, that is going to be highly motivated to have an opportunity to kind of pay JMU back for the whooping we put on them last year. How do you see this matchup and how that will factor in, their motivation to beat us, but our motivation as a team, JMU, to show that this week's loss isn't going to be something more than just a one-game blip for JMU, and to keep that from being, a two-game skid. I think this is going to be a highly motivated JMU team going into this week's matchup.
Yeah, I thought I thought Coastal's done a great job since they either listened to Grayson and they put the old packages back in. So when they played App State, you saw Grayson McCall run like Grayson ran, and they put the old plays back in that Chadwell had in the playbook. And they've been playing off those plays since. And I give Tim Beck a lot of credit. A lot of head coaches wouldn't do that, but they were misusing Grayson McCall. And I think to his credit, he pushed whoever pushed, and now they've done it with the rest of those quarterbacks. There's no other team that I can think of in G5 that have three solid quarterbacks and they don't lose anything putting those guys in. They're extremely talented. Their wide receivers are unbelievably good. Running backs are good. The defense is much better. Everybody's going to think, well, we just ran all over them last year and we'll beat them, like a drum in Coastal. This is a different Coastal team than they had last year. Much different. The defense is better, much better. So it's going to be a good game. The problem for them is you've got a massively pissed off JMU fan base and JMU team. You thought they were aggravated. You didn't want us to lose yesterday. You wanted us to ride high into Conway at 11-0 so you could knock us off. What we're going to do now is we're going to come in and we're going to punch you right in the face. And you better be able to take a punch because we'll take yours. We'll take yours all day long. And it's going to be a brutal, as Michael said on Friday on the McAfee show, it's a slobber knocker. That's a good old wrestling term from good old JR back in the WWE when he's talking about Stone Cold Steve Austin. This will be a knockdown, drag-out fight. If Grayson can get cleared, he's going to play, I would imagine. I don't think he's going to play. It doesn't make sense logically because he's got a good career in the next level. But if he wants to play, I don't blame him. It's his last game. And he talked about when he was on Frary and Smith earlier this year, which is kind of, I feel bad for Noah and for Caden because they had him on and he got hurt. About 2 games later, they had Jalen on. Jalen got hurt. But that's what Grayson talked about, was he came back to get in. He wants to get in the Hall of Fame at Coastal. That means something to him. They got a lot of pride down there. As much as, we don't like them, they don't like us, but that's a very prideful team. And they've done a really nice job since they moved up. If you look at what they did, Mickey coached for them for a bit. They did a really good job moving up. So I'm excited to go down there. We're going to have a lot of people are going. There's going to be a lot of purple in that stadium. And there's going to be a lot of purple in your tailgates. If you don't like purple, Coastal, get over it because we're coming.
Taylor, your thoughts on this game? You'll also be making the trip down with me to Conway. What are you looking forward to see from JMU bouncing back from this week's loss to App State, and the importance of, as you mentioned to me in some text messages, all of our goals are still ahead of us this year?
That's the point that I was going to make. Like I said, I stayed off social media the last 24 hours because I really didn't want any of my opinions or thoughts to kind of be influenced by some others. And from the few people that I have actually talked to, and I said, hey, what are they saying on social media? I've actually been surprised to hear that it seems like a lot of people are really not down and out. I mean, it seems like, part of me thought that there would be a contingent of JMU fans that would just kind of, oh man, there it goes. There goes the undefeated season. But it sounds like everyone is like, no, We're right there. We're 10-1. We're 10-1 with a chance to still win the Sun Belt East. We're 10-1.
We still have a shot at a New Year's Six bowl. I'm not ruling that out. I mean, it's
Well,
number 24 in the AP poll. Number 24
right.
still.
And you know, this question about the lawsuit, and I know there was some pot stirring on Twitter last night. I'm hearing it secondhand. Haven't looked at it myself, but I know there was some pot stirring about, okay, can we get over the lawsuit now? No, we can't get over the lawsuit, because here's the thing. The lawsuit accomplishes so much. Barry hit on a lot of what the lawsuit accomplishes. Just some of the financial damages and the financial impact that can have to JMU. That's one. Number two, I want the NCAA to pay. I mean, you heard McAfee talk about it on Friday. You heard the game day guys talk about it on Saturday. I want the NCAA to pay for what they've done. I want them to be held responsible for holding this team and this school and this fan base to something they've rightfully earned and deserve. Number three, I want the Sun Belt Championship. That's what Curt Cignetti keeps saying. You know, people say, well, you know, Curt, it's looking more and more like you know,
at home.
At home. But people keep saying, you know, Curt, it looks like a little like you're going to get a bowl anyway, because mathematically it looks like there's not going to be enough teams. You don't come to JMU to play for bowls. You come to JMU to play for championships. We want a Sun Belt championship. And then, like Barry said, look, call me crazy, call him crazy, call whoever you want crazy. The fact is, if we knock around Coastal Carolina, we go 11-1, we get the opportunity to play in a Sun Belt championship. We take on Troy again, go 12-1. Our resume is going to be as good as any one-loss team is out there. So I'm not going to put that. I'm not going to say that's off the table. And I don't care how small of a chance it is. The fact remains, every goal that was on the table last week is still there. And every goal that we had before the season and 2 years ago when we announced this move to the Sun Belt, I mean, this just was not on anyone's radar. So I think I was texting with someone during the show, and I said, it's almost like we hit the $100 million lottery. We were this close to hitting the $200 million lottery, but we've still hit the $100 million lottery. This team and this school and Coach Cignetti and his staff and these players, we always talk about this team. I want to just lift up and say thank you to every single one of these players that gave me the opportunity to spend time with my two kids on the quad where I met my wife, watching College Game Day. I can't tell you how grateful I am all day Saturday, all day Friday, people coming up and saying they watch the Sound Off. That's awesome, because the four of us, I mean, look, we're super fans that had an idea to grab a mic and get on a podcast, but we are no more or less like you. And I just want to say thank you to everyone that listens and allows us to be a part of your JMU fan experience. I'm incredibly grateful for all that. And this team and Coach Cignetti's staff, and I can't not leave out Jeff Bourne and just the role he's played for 25 years at JMU. I don't want to keep just going on a rant and rambling here, but my
Taylor,
goodness,
we weren't supposed to beat Michigan State, and we had 0% chance to beat Kent State.
Amen. I mean, everything that, as Barry's talking, some of the points that you were making, Barry, where I was just like, it just sounds weird when you say it, how successful it would sound weird if you were Texas or UNC or Ohio State. I mean, what we've accomplished is a really big thing. It's a really big deal. And
we are relevant in the national scene, despite the massive financial disadvantage we have to the rest of the world.
Yes. So as heartbreaking as that loss was on Saturday, not only is nothing off the table, but part of me just loves the way the game was lost, because I'm like, this just adds one more chapter to an epic rivalry. And I can't wait to go down to Boone and throw some streamers in their face when we knock them off on the mountain. I mean, it's just, this is a great time to be a JMU fan.
Hey, Steve, real quick on the lawsuit, though, because I know you wanted to chime in. And I know you believe that this is an important lawsuit as well for a number of reasons. What should people look forward to tomorrow, and what are the implications that could potentially come from it this week? And if you have any insight on the merits of this suit, I think our audience would definitely be interested in hearing your perspective as a respected member of the legal community here in the Commonwealth.
Well, if everybody has a chance to, you should read the letter the Hunt and Williams wrote to the NCAA on November 15th. It's on Shane Metlin's tweet from last week. He wrote a good article today about his interview with the Attorney General, Jason Miyares. What's, I believe, going to happen tomorrow is the lawsuit's going to get filed. They'll have to schedule a injunction hearing if they're filing for an injunction, which I think they are. That's going to have to happen Tuesday, Wednesday. The court's always open. I mean, it's open 24 hours a day, but that's for real emergency type stuff. they're not going to claim this is a real emergency, because if we're filing it tomorrow, the court's going to have to give us a hearing Tuesday or Wednesday, potentially Friday. I don't know if the court's open Friday, but they could have a hearing on Friday. But I believe you'll have a hearing on Tuesday or Wednesday. There's irreparable harm here. So to win an injunction, you have to prove two things. There's a couple things you have to prove, but I'll give you the two that are the big ones. You have to prove that you're likely to win. There's a likelihood of success on the merits if you went to trial. It's the first thing you have to prove. The Hunton letter lays it out well, lays it out very well. The NCAA has it's an antitrust violation. The way that they're running this whole waiver issue, this whole transition piece, it violates the Antitrust Act. So I think there's a likelihood of success on the merits of the case. We have irreparable harm. These guys, you can't pay these people money, our student athletes. They can't get money to get back this time. So normally what happens in an injunction, when I argue against an injunction, is, hey, if we're wrong, we can write a check. In the regular business transaction world, that works. But these guys can't get this back. So it's irreparable harm to them. At the end of the day, if they don't get to play in the conference championship and they don't have a chance for a better bowl, or they can play in the New Year's Six bowl if they're eligible for it, they'll never get that back. So if you're sitting as a judge, that's what you look at. You're looking at those two types of issues. I think they have both. If it were another school in Virginia, I would say they have both. It's not just JMU. And the Attorney General mentioned it yesterday in his press conference. He said, I'd do this for any university in the Commonwealth that's going through what JMU is going through. It's not a JMU thing. It's what's right. The other thing that they're missing, and the NCAA misses a lot, they now have a legislative problem on their hands. They not only have a judicial problem, but now you've got the Senate. You've got the Senate in Virginia that's all over them now, and has written to the other senators in all 50 states to get together with the Black Caucus and to go after them with legislation that really cripples the NCAA. So not only have they lit up the legal side, the judicial side of this, they've lit up the legislative side of this, which nobody's really talking about. That's the part that's really going to nail them. If we can get them on this part, great. This gives us what we want going forward. You get them on the legislative piece of this, they're in trouble. Read this letter from Senator Lucas. He just scrolled past it on the Twitter feed, but look at Louise Lucas's Twitter. She has a wonderful letter she sent out to everybody in the legislatures throughout the United States. So you've picked the wrong fight, dummies. I hope you're happy in Indianapolis that you picked the fight, because now we're going to take it to you. You want 12 rounds of a fight? You're only in the first round. So my hope is we get the injunction. I hope that comes through for us. I hope we file the lawsuit first of all, because we got to file that tomorrow, and then we get the injunction. So my hope is that that's what happens. Who knows what happens in a courtroom? You have no idea. It's open. There'll be an open court hearing in Harrisonburg, I believe in federal court in Harrisonburg, because I think that's where it's going to be filed. So you can go grab lunch down on the down there on the square and pop over there to the courthouse if you want to watch the hearing. But my hope is we get this thing resolved Tuesday or Wednesday.
Awesome. Thank you, Steven. And Barry, I'm going to let you be a part of the end of We Always End Sound Off with our final thoughts. Any final message from you just to the JMU community about your message that you said earlier, anything else you'd like to share just about what this moment means for fans of JMU?
If you don't mind, before I do this, I wanted to say one other thing on the legal matter. So, if you think about it, since we've had the New Year's Six set up and this whole college football playoff set up, only American West and American Conference and Mountain West teams have ever made that bowl game. So I talked about the $10 to $12 million per year per team versus the 2 to 3. That's without the bowl money. That's just the TV money, right? So then on top of that, the Fiesta Bowl is going to pay out another $4 to $5 million, or the Peach Bowl or whatever it is. And then there's all the indirect gains. That's direct gains, all the indirect gains that come, as a result of being in the Fiesta Bowl or Peach Bowl, or whichever one it is. So the NCAA is saying that for the first time ever, the Sun Belt, forget about JMU, the Sun Belt has a chance to put a team in that New Year's Six Bowl. And they're saying effectively, nope. We're going to keep all the money where the money already is. That is the absolute definition of antitrust and financial corruption. The fact that they didn't see this and had it blasted by Pat McAfee the way it was on television last week, I 100% think that irreparable harm will be proven and that injunction will be given. We just got to do it on the field, right? So I needed to make that point because I just don't think it's not obvious, what this is really all about when it comes to dollars and cents. Final thoughts. You asked me, what did I think about the game, about the App State game before we got on with everybody and before we opened up the podcast. And I said, this is why we're here. Like, I hated that we lost, but we're not in the CAA anymore. We're in a real conference with real football. That plays at a high level every week in, week out. And we're gonna lose games like we did at App State, and it's gonna suck. But it's part of the ride, and it makes everything else that much more sweet. And I wouldn't have traded a thing for the weekend at all. And what's interesting is my son and I, my youngest and I, were talking about what we like best this weekend. My favorite part of the weekend was Friday night, the basketball game. I don't think I would have ever said that, projected going that in. It's not because we lost the football game. I had backstage at College Game Day yesterday. It was fantastic. My favorite part was Friday night at the basketball game because there was just something special about having both sports this good. JMU Nation, enjoy this ride. Be a part of this ride. Help JMU put the foot on the gas and accelerate taking us to this next level, which will happen. But the rate at which it happens is up to everybody out there listening to this Twitter space.
Thank you, Barry. I share your view, by the way. That I thought Friday night was the best part of the weekend. It was that atmosphere was unbelievable. So get to the AUBC. Benefit of basketball is a lot more games you can go to, a lot more opportunities to cheer on the Deuce, a lot more opportunities to really enjoy a spectacular venue that's finally getting its coming out party with the success that's happening on the court. Taylor, your final thoughts as we head into another important week for JMU athletics, both with the lawsuit and the game on Saturday. You're on mute, Taylor. Yeah, we'll come back to you, Taylor. We'll go to you, Mike.
Chandler. Chandler, we miss you.
Me too. We'll go to you, Michael. We'll go to you real quick.
Yeah, that was kind of like putting my thoughts together for the last segment. I don't want this to be me talking about myself, but I did want to say I appreciate everyone following the last decade or so. And what I mean there is I started the Twitter account as a recruiting account in a basement of one of my relatives in Maryland when I was interning in 2010, just because I thought people may like recruiting, and found out a lot of people did, and it brought everyone's attention back to JMU, et cetera. And just to get a DM from Pat McAfee on a random Wednesday and to find myself on College Game Day was just unimaginable. But I wanted to use that platform to let everyone in the country know how amazing James Madison University is. And I wanted people to hear it, and I wanted people to feel it. And afterwards, from the feedback and the people coming up and saying thank you and hearing from all of us on the line here, I think I did that. And I'm just like very proud. And I just feel very, how can I say this, privileged to just represent this amazing institution and this amazing program. Not just football, but across the board. We're in everything school now. So that's my sort of like take here to end the sound off. But we've got one more job to do, and that's to go 1-0 this week against Coastal.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. Taylor, we'll see if your mic's back.
Check. Am I good?
It is. You're back.
Okay.
The floor is yours.
So I think most people know at this point that I spent a good amount of my career at UTSA. So they are playing Tulane on ABC, 3:30 on Friday. I encourage JMU fans to tune in and cheer for my Roadrunners, because taking out Tulane might be the only roadblock in between us and getting an NY6 if things go our way in the courts this week. So birds up, go Runners. Grateful is probably the word that has bounced around my head the most this week. And, Barry, you kind of hit the nail on the head when the McAfee show on Friday, the basketball game Friday night, game day on Saturday. I mean, let's just all think about 26,000 people in the quad for a second. And I mentioned on the last episode that some of my SEC buddies who got a kick out of me mentioning them last week. How a lot of SEC fans, they go to these schools and people don't go to game day anymore because it's like been there, done that. Remember, we were one of 9 schools in the last 8 years that have had college game day 3 or more times. So at this point, game day is not a new thing. And I'm pretty sure we've gone from 12 to 15 to 26,000 people. So this is JMU just saying we're proud of our university. We know we're great at a lot, and we're just going to continue to show how passionate we are as a fan base. So kudos to every single person that stayed out on the quad. For most of you, the crowd was so big you couldn't hear or really see anything, but you stood there because you knew it looked good on camera. So good job for doing your part. Want to give a quick shout out. We mentioned these guys at the beginning of every show. Skyline Financial, they stepped up to sponsor us before the season started, when our listenership was probably a tenth of what it is now. And some of the seed funding from that sponsorship is what allowed us to have the equipment that we have, allowed us to have some of the software, and even make this production possible. So we always say Skyline Financial, check them out if you've ever thought about, you have questions about financial advising, money management, just planning for your family. Give them a shout out, skylinefinancial.com. Look into them, because there are a bunch of JMU guys that have been sponsoring the Duke Club Golf Tournament for years. They're sponsoring us. They love JMU, and I can speak from experience for some of the folks that on Sound Off that use them. They're good guys. And the last thing I just want to say is, John, you, me, Pitts, we had that picture on the quad with some of the Duke Club folks, student Duke Club folks, I should say, before JMU was the cool, trendy thing to do. And, getting 1 or 2 sections over on the old Godwin side was a good day of the student section. I think about that group. I think about Barry. I look at Steve. I worked with him when I worked there. And there's just so many people that have been working tirelessly and very hard to a day where this became a reality. You all believed it, and you put in the hours when it wasn't sexy or attractive to do so. And so we're really standing on the shoulders of giants. We got a couple of them on the broadcast tonight. There's a lot of others that listen to us. You know who I'm talking about. If you're listening to this, you know who you are. I just want to say thank you for making everything that happened this weekend possible, and for every other JMU memory I have had. And I still think the best is still to come for the football team this year. So go Dukes.
Awesome. Steve, your final thoughts.
Yeah, I normally do a wrestling shtick for my last thought, but I'm not going to do that tonight. I'm going to change it up a little bit. My final thoughts really for the JMU football team and athletics in general. I'll give a shout out to all the other athletic teams. I'm not shorting you at all, but I'm going to talk more about football tonight. But I want to thank you all too for everything that you've done. These last 2 years, we announced the Sun Belt 2 years ago around this time frame. That's when we all went to the AUBC. That's when we had the press conference. And if you think of what's happened in the last 24 months, it's been unbelievable. The entire university has taken a huge step forward over the last 2 years. It's been led by the football team, but all the other sports have contributed mightily to it, every one of them. If you didn't believe that athletics is truly the front porch of this university 2 years ago, and you don't believe it now, you don't have a clue. This is exactly what athletics is designed to do. Enrollment's up, honors college is up, athletics is up, all the scholarship part is up in the university. This is buoying the entire university. The game against Coastals for the Eastern Division Championship on Saturday, and hopefully the right to host the Sun Belt Championship on December the 2nd. We win on Saturday, we're the East champs. If for some reason we can't play in the championship game, we're still the champions of the Sun Belt. That's how it's going to be. There's not going to be kings of the East. That's not what we're going to be called. We're the champions because we've earned it. So everything else right now for the football team, that's in hands of everybody else. But here's some things to remember as we prepare for the game on Saturday as a team. The theme for me, and this is the theme I'm throwing out there, the coaches will do whatever they want, of course. They don't listen to me. But my theme is going to be preparation, attention to detail, and resilience. The team is asking themselves, what's in it for us as a team this week? That's what they should be thinking about. You stick to your plan. You anticipate, but you don't improvise. You never yield an advantage. You don't yield to these guys ever. You crush them for a solid 60 minutes. I don't want to see, when we're up by a bunch, a victory formation. I want to score another touchdown with no time on the clock. That's not my call. I'm not a coach, but I'm a fan. But we're not going to yield at all. I love this team. I love the coaching staff. I love the other staff that work with this team more than you'll ever know. So thank you. Go forward. This week is Hell Week number 2. And come Thanksgiving, you can give thanks right now, though, Coastal. Give thanks to what you're going to eat, because that's the last good thing you're going to have for 2 more days, because we're rolling into Myrtle Beach and we're taking it to you like you've never had it taken to you before.
Thank you, Steve. I'm also going to take a moment to show a little Thanksgiving. This was a tough week in the McNamara household as we lost the matriarch of our family, my grandmother, Kathy. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone as a part of this broadcast and to so many others who reached out. It was a little hard to be in Harrisonburg this weekend away from my family, but my family thought it would be a good escape. And so many people, I want to Zach Price, Catherine Alexander, Colleen Gallagher, people who came up and Lisa Futterman, Mike Puglia, who came up, gave me a hug, and made sure I was focused on having a little bit of a good time and escape. It's just, again, I think Taylor always does such a really beautiful job of taking what happens on the field and broadening it out to, as Barry said in his, seeing friends you haven't seen in a long time, maybe once a year at a game. This weekend was a really good healing moment for me, and it's because of so many people who I've become very close with as a result of JMU. And it's because of these weekly, trips up to Harrisonburg and the road trips that you have that experience and such close friends that we all get to stay connected and our mutual love of JMU athletics. And I just want to say it meant a lot to me. And it's something that I hope many, many other people find their own moments where they're able to find some comfort in something or to find some joy in a tough world through JMU athletics. And that's what's so beautiful about everything that comes together in Harrisonburg when we're up there cheering on the Dukes. And it meant a lot for me this weekend, maybe more than your typical weekend experience. Also had my own personal really cool moment is we all talked about the era when it wasn't cool to be a JMU fan. I remember trying to convince people in Eagle Hall to make the 50-yard trek over to Bridgeforth when you used to be able to just walk right through the end zone. And yesterday, as a part of College Game Day, Emily Millington is the name of the person who I saw, and she now has season tickets with her family, had her kids there, signs for game day. Now they're talking about going to basketball games, and it's just an indication of a lot has changed since 2001. And it's because of a lot of people on this, as Taylor said, and a lot of people who are listening, and just we should take pride in it, because this was a celebration this weekend of a lot of hard work and a lot of great things. And as I think Barry said really well, this is just the beginning. We're just getting started. Now we have to get to the next chapter and the next rung on the ladder. And everyone who's purple, pride in there, don't be upset by the loss yesterday. It was a bad loss. Yes, we'll move on from it, but celebrate this, enjoy this, and if you can, find a way to get down the coastal. If not, gather with some other Dukes and enjoy this game on Saturday, because it's a big one. And as always, we'll be back next Sunday for our normal episode of JMU Sound Off, 8 p.m., recapping hopefully us defending our Kings of the East title, and as Steve said, Sunbelt East champions. So everybody, enjoy your Thanksgiving, enjoy your week, and guys, have a good Thanksgiving. Safe travels down to Myrtle Beach. And with that, as always, thanks and go Dukes. Talk to you next week, guys.